Hey guys, it's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. So I wanted to give some quick comparisons between two video games I've been playing that I had talked about in a few previous videos, but I'm really enjoying both of them. And that is Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, the game. This just came out physically this Friday the 13th of October, and this one has been out, I think, physically for a few months, easy. It's probably more, it's like 3 or 4 months, I'm not sure. I picked this one up when it was $20. It's now normally $30. This one is $40 currently, and hopefully it'll drop in price maybe another $10 soon so that they're in the same vein price-wise. Both games are really good, so that's the first thing I want to start off with. They're very similar, but they're also very different. So both games are asymmetrical, online only survivor games. So you either play as a killer in each of them or a survivor. In this one, you play as just Jason, but different variations of Jason from each of the films, or even the Nintendo-looking version where he's purple, or there's a downloadable one that Tom Savini made where it looks like Jason's on fire, and he's like burning from the inside out. That's really cool looking. That one is free. So different variations of Jason in this. He does pretty much the same stuff with each character. Some of them have minor variations, but for the most part, the differences in the Jasons are sort of minuscule, to me at least. Some of them can warp, some of them can, jump ahead and sort of like zip around and teleport short distances or semi-long distances, really, because the maps are bigger in this game than they are in Dead by Daylight. But each Jason will have little specs, and it'll say to you, like, this Jason can run, he moves fast in water, and he can teleport. I think they call it morphing, if you go on the map and zip around, or you can sort of, like, teleport in front of you. So certain Jasons can do certain things. Other Jasons have, like, better grabs, where when you grab someone, they have a harder chance to get away from you, or your weapon is stronger and you can break things easier, stuff like that. So just all different variations of Jason. If you want more of a variation in killers, Dead by Daylight is your game. Like I said, both games are asymmetrical multiplayer games where one person plays the bad guy, and then in Jason, I think it's 8 or 9 people play the counselors. It says 2 to 8, so I guess it's 7 people play the counselors, and then one person is Jason. In this, it's 4 people play the survivors, and 1 person is the killer, I believe. So, in Dead by Daylight, you can play as like 8 characters if you're a killer. The other thing is Friday the 13th is random. So, when you go into a room of 8 people or 9 people or whatever it is, as long as your preference is set to neither Jason or the counselor, you don't know who you're going to play. Until the cutscene kicks in, you don't know if you're Jason, you don't know if you're a counselor. So that's pretty cool. In Dead by Daylight, you pick whether you want to be the killer or the survivor, and you know right away what you're going to be because you're going into the game like that. As I said, this has more variations in terms of the killers. They all play completely different than one another. Some are fast, some are slow. Some can, like the doctor can shock people and make them go insane and see things that aren't there. The hag can put down these like hexes, and if somebody walks over one and gets scared, you can then teleport to the hex. There's a huntress that zips around and like throws hatchets at people. This also has Michael Myers, who is a really cool addition to the game, and they just added Leatherface, so he's a really cool addition. So all the killers in this play very drastically different, where in this they're a little more similar, even though for the most part most of them do the same things. Some of the Jasons are a little different, but in Dead by Daylight, way more variation in terms of the killers for me. The other thing is, as I said, the maps are much bigger in Friday the 13th. Dead by Daylight, they feel more small. The only way to escape from the killers in Dead by Daylight is you have to fix 5 generators as long as the room is full. If the room isn't full, then there's less generators to fix to even out the score a bit. You have to fix the generators. The killer can come over and hit you. If they hit you twice, you're down, or 3 times if you have a perk on your character that does that. But anyway, if they hit you twice, you're down. Then they have to lift you up and then you can break away at that point, but they have to find a hook to put you on, just like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You can choose to wiggle off the hook, which I don't recommend, or wait for one of the other survivors to come around and try and save you. In Friday the 13th, if you get hit a few times, you pretty much just die. It's usually like, I would say around 4 hits, depending on the character. Or you can be grabbed and pretty much one-shotted by Jason unless you break away quickly. So it's a little easier, I would say, to get killed by Jason than it is in Dead by Daylight, because in Dead by Daylight you seem to have a little bit more wiggle room. But I have seen people who have, fought Jasons that have lower health, I guess, and then they're playing a character that's very strong, and they've ran circles around Jason and stunned him a bunch of times. So it's almost even, I would say, in that regard. The variation in the killers in this one has a very big variation in this for how you can escape from Jason. So where in this game you are just repairing generators to open a door, there's 2 doors at the end, you can figure out whatever one you want to go to, try and open it before the killer gets to you and escape. And there's a hatch if you're the last person and you've repaired enough generators, that's like a trap door. In this, you have a very big variation between how you can escape from Jason. You can find a boat propeller and gasoline and escape on a boat. You can call the cops and escape through an exit where the cops arrive from. You can kill Jason, which is extremely hard to do, and I haven't done it yet. You can put gasoline, a battery, and get car keys and drive a car away. So it's hard to explain because both games are similar in ways, because the main setup is similar, where it's a bunch of survivors versus one enemy. However, they play fairly different, and the means of escape are very different in this than they are this. So if you don't mind the mundane sort of, okay, I'm fixing a generator, I'm hiding, I'm trying to get away, I'm trying to find items, that's Dead by Daylight. If you want some more variation in terms of, you're going into different cabins in the woods, you're opening drawers, you're finding different items to equip, or maybe different parts you need for the boat or different parts you need for the car, that's Friday the 13th. Another thing I wanted to point out is Friday the 13th is very reminiscent, and the Angry Video Game Nerd mentioned this, and I agree, of the Nintendo game. Because in the Nintendo game, you're going around, you're finding items in the cabins, you're going into the cabins, you're encountering Jason, you're trying to take him down while saving other survivors. So it's very similar to the Nintendo version, except this is just online currently. They are going to add a single player mode with bots, where I don't believe Dead by Daylight is going to do that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you are playing offline, I wouldn't recommend either game, but if you have to get one, Friday the 13th is supposed to add a single player mode, I believe, where I don't think Dead by Daylight is going to do that. You can't even say like, oh, well, you have the like classic horror icon of Jason in this, because you have the classic horror icons of Michael Myers and Leatherface in this. So that's kind of on both games. Both games graphically are pretty good. You can tell they're not high-end releases. You're not going to find graphics like The Witcher 3 or, some high-name video game release. Both games aren't the best looking, but they're nice enough. The only thing I would say in the negative column for both games is they are buggy. In Dead by Daylight, the game has froze on me maybe a handful of times, probably like 3 or 4 times, and locked me out and just shut either the system off or the game off. Once it happened after I escaped. So I escaped, it froze, threw me out, the escape didn't count, and I got no points. So that really stinks. The good thing about Dead by Daylight is if somebody leaves the game, if the killer leaves the game, you get points for being the survivor and the killer leaving. If another survivor leaves, then the killer, can still track down the rest of the people and continue the game. Whoever the host is in this game, it doesn't switch hosts over to another person, and it doesn't let you escape whatever experience that you've obtained so far that I've noticed. So if you're the host and your game freezes or you leave, the whole game ends and nobody gets nothing. So that seems to happen more often in this. I'm also noticing that the load times are quicker in Friday the 13th in terms of getting into a game, but the bugginess is higher for me in Friday the 13th. I've had so many games that the game freezes and just stops and cuts out, and the characters are all running in place, and then it just ends. As I said, if a host leaves, the game just ends. The other thing is, what was the other? There was one more thing that happened. Oh, in Friday the 13th, about 2 or 3 times, my character was invisible, and you just see a weapon walking around in midair. So it seems pretty buggy. They're both buggy in their own way. I would say the load times, like I said, are worse in Dead by Daylight. Both games are really, really fun though. If you have a group of friends, or even if you can meet some randoms online and work together and talk, they're both great games. In Dead by Daylight, there's no proximity chat. So if you walk up to someone and you're trying to talk to them to tell them to, let's say, help you with a generator, or maybe, warn them that Leatherface is coming, they won't hear you unless you're in a party. In Friday the 13th, there is proximity chat. So if you go near someone, they'll hear you, or you can pick up walkie-talkies, and whoever has a walkie-talkie, no matter how far they are, they'll hear you. So I would say in terms of communication, Friday the 13th nails it more. And if you're Jason and you get near someone, a survivor, you can taunt them. So what I do is I sing songs or tell the people I want to hug them, and then I come over and murder them. I'm going to include a couple small clips at the end of this video for each game, so you can see the graphics a little bit. The sound is great for both titles. I think that they really capture the Jason game, or the Jason, franchise, with the type of stuff. The music, there's a Friday the 13th song in the game by the Misfits, which is pretty funny, and it captures the atmosphere. Dead by Daylight has a great atmosphere, and you have to definitely use the sound to figure out how to repair things, or where the killer is, or if the generator over there, where the generators are, if they're maybe being repaired, you can hear it. So both games are very big on sound, and in both games, if you're looking to repair something, where in Dead by Daylight it's just a generator, or if you're healing someone, and in Friday the 13th, if you're fixing a boat or fixing a car, there's little quick time events where you have to push the button quickly. I would say it's a little harder in Dead by Daylight. Sometimes it can be a little quicker, where you have to get it at a certain point, where Friday the 13th, it's a little easier to do, I'd say. Maybe it's just the characters or the counselors I'm picking. In both games, you can unlock perks to make your killer or survivors have different perks and attributes. That's both similar for the survivors, but in Friday the 13th, you really don't have perks for Jason. You just have different kills. Like you can crush people's heads, or chop their head off, or gouge their eyeballs out. In Dead by Daylight, you actually have perks that do change things. So one of the killers I like is the Trapper. He puts down bear traps on the floor. One of his perks is you can put the bear traps down quicker, or different things like that. There are perks that are specific to each killer and each survivor in Dead by Daylight, but later on you can teach them to other killers if you raise your level up. It's a lot to take in, and I apologize for the rambling. Like I said, both games are great. Both games are similar. If you want variations, in the end, if you want a very big variation in killers and the gameplay-wise killers, go with Dead by Daylight, because the counselor gameplay is very similar between each of the counselors. Even though some have different perks and variations, you're always repairing generators and trying to escape through a door or a trap door if you're the last one left. Friday the 13th, you have many ways to get away, or not many, but maybe 3 or 4 ways to get away, as opposed to just one in Dead by Daylight. So both games are great. I think you can have fun with either. If either of this sounded interesting to you, let me know if you've played them or what you think is better. Most people tend to go towards Friday the 13th for, I think, the variation in escaping. But both games are great. So let me know what you guys think. Check out these small clips of some gameplay I captured on my Xbox. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. Be good.
Yes. Please, no!
You need to get every last motherfucking cop out here to Camp Crystal!